Dr. Chafuen, tell me about your journey and the highlights leading you up to spending over 27 years as president and CEO at the Atlas Network.
Well, it's a long story, and there is a book, and I think your viewers can find it online, that is asks several of us how I became a liberal. The word liberal means very different in other parts of the world than the United States. Usually a liberal means a lover of freedom, economic freedom, political freedom. And I was raised in Argentina, which was a country that competed with the United States for being one of the shining lights, of the world. All my ancestors came from Europe, in the 19th century, and some came in the early 20th century, because Argentina was a great land of opportunity. But it was a great land of opportunity when it followed the principles that basically made the United States great. Some sort of rule of law, no division of power, private property, freedom of the press, and so. But Argentina, at the time when I was born, we still had a dictator called Juan Perón, who was democratically elected, but achieved a lot of power. Many people depend from the state, and changing that has been very difficult. Argentina still is under the scourge of Peronism. But also during my teenage years, there was an attempt of communism to take over South America, and I had some curiosity, and he basically was the father of my tennis partner when I was a late teenager, who was already a sort of free society champion, a lawyer, who gave me to read some of the founding fathers of Argentina that are almost similar to your Thomas Jefferson. And that started me in my career to say, look, freedom is a treasure, you have to work to defend it. And I think I started my first organization when I was 21 to 22, a youth circle to promote freedom. So that's what got it started. Then it's a long story. I was lucky to be asked to translate a professor from a German professor who studied under Ludwig von Mises, one of the great economists of the 20th century. And this professor, Dr. Hans Sennholz, was the head of the economics department at Grove City College. And long story, after he came back to the United States, he told me he had a scholarship so I could study under him. And again, that changed my life. I met my wife while I was writing a book on the Christian foundations of the free market at Grove City College. Now I'm a trustee of the Grove City College. And as soon as I married, I started volunteering my work for something called Atlas Economic Research Foundation, founded by an Englishman who helped change England, Anthony Fisher. And I was president of that until the end of 2017, where I joined a group that I helped start the Acton Institute. I was one of the founding trustees. But the founders are Father Robert Sirico and Chris Mauren. And I thought that it's time to win the moral side for the free society. I think people know that some sort of capitalist society creates more good, but many people blame, saying that it's unfair. And I believe that if we need to win the hearts and minds of moralists, and so that is my goal in life. Now helping Acton Institute develop even more globally.
Mm-hmm. So what sparked this interest in economics? I know you spoke of your experience with communism and the importance of free markets and free societies, but why the study of economics? Why is this particularly interesting to you?
To tell you the truth, I came from a family of, my family were notaries from the father's side. Notary is like a Ph.D. for law in other countries. So you have to have a law degree and then become a notary. And it's almost like something that you inherit. And you're set for life, because everything in these bureaucratic countries need a notary, and you charge a lot. But when I had to decide to go to the university, I think my choices was not economic. It was business administration or law. But I thought I was going to have to emigrate. So I tried to pick a science, that I could export the knowledge no matter what. I did not know that law was a graduate degree in the United States. Perhaps I would have taken law. I think rule of law, I think, is more important. You need good economics and good rule of law. But rule of law is the master key that unleashes all the creative power of the free society and of the free market. Only 1/3 of the world has something that resembles rule of law. In most countries, you have rules by bureaucracy, and it's a problem because the bureaucracy, usually works in cahoots, tied to mercantilistic and corporate interest, and there are a lot of people who are left out of the most productive areas of the economy. But again, I'm very glad because the economics, I studied all the typical, what's called Keynesian and neoclassical and status quo economics. But very early on, I started studying the Austrian School of Economics. That is a perspective of economics that really lets you understand, starts by the human person, how the human person decides. So I think it's a great complement and much needed for all who work in public policy, to get insights from this Austrian School of Economics.
Fantastic. Now, as an expert on international policy, what are your thoughts on the current situation in Venezuela?
Well, again, they have done almost everything wrong from the point of view of economics. But I don't think it's by mistake. If you have studied history, you've seen how Stalin used hunger as a tool, killing people with famines. That was structured, and the same happens now with Venezuela. So I think the basic problem is political. That I think that is part of a strategy to try to weaken the Western world, and especially as the United States leadership, and that all the bad economics is not just mistakes or a problem of the price of oil. Yeah, the price of oil went down, but that was all over the world. Why we only see in Venezuela having that huge impact. So from the point of view of private property, from the point of view of freedom to price, from the point of view of sound money, they lead the world in doing what is wrong, and good economic science will tell you will create effects that are opposite than the one you intend. But for me, it's all purposeful. It's not mistakes.
Now, I noticed a few years back you took an International Leadership Institute training. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience and how it helped you?
Well, what happens for a professor when you're surrounded by other good teachers, you learn a lot. I actually taught one, I don't recall exactly, I think perhaps it was fundraising in difficult territories. And the other one, I spoke twice, and the other one was fundraising with integrity. I see a lot of people fundraising, with just almost lying, exaggerating issues, because that's more effective in indirect mail. And the other topic is that the way that you fundraise is there's some things that you can, you always need to ask for money. If not, money will not come, from the sky. But a lot of the rules are different in different parts of the world. The former president of Grove City College always repeated saying that fundraising is friend raising. And the way you make friends is very different in different countries. Here in the United States, you can be sometimes, very direct, and on the first meeting, ask someone for a donation. In other countries, it takes a long time. I learned with Anthony Fisher, a British gentleman. Sometimes I think he used to say it takes like 7 years until you get the first donation. And it's interesting. He helped start many think tanks, and most of the think tanks that he's helped start were reticent at using direct mail. and are still reticent. But I know it works. So with other professors speaking about other topics, it helped me a lot in my career. And then because you have superb speakers, going to this international schools of fundraising, and also I learned there's a good place to recommend others to go. So whenever I get advance notice that Leadership Institute is having a program somewhere in the world, I recommend people to go to their programs.
What are your current goals in your position now at Acton Institute?
Yeah, interesting. I see myself, as you can see, I'm like a venture capitalist for liberty. And I was an agnostic, an atheist, and then I found God. And then I realized, God and liberty are really the same thing. So I want to be a good venture capitalist for God. I think that's nice. So to find the best people around the world, to find the best organizations around the world, to bring them close to Acton Institute, which is a group that has as a mission to promote a free and virtuous society, which is characterized by individual liberty, but guided by Judeo principles and the best economic research. For me, globe-trotting can be finding all the best talent and helping them connect, with great groups, introducing them to Leadership Institute, when it's the proper thing to do. So that is my goal. The battle never ends. It's we always will have challenges, but a good friend of mine, Ed Fellner from the Heritage Foundation, he always says there are no permanent victories in politics, and also there are no permanent losses. And I think the same happens, in our lives and in our efforts to promote the free society. We lose some, win some, but overall, hopefully, we are good stewards and, help lead the world to become a better place.
Well, speaking of faith and liberty, your book, Faith and Liberty, what inspired you to write it, and why is it important to the international community?
I was so anti-church. I used to be expelled from the classes at Catholic University, and I went to I think the best high school in Argentina, founded by the Presbyterians in 1838, St. Andrew's Scott School. But when we were there, we took Cambridge examinations, and all was a typical, dogmas. The French Revolution good, the Industrial Revolution bad. So I adopted the libertarian side. Always spoke badly against the role of the church. The church had neglected freedom, and in senior year at Catholic University, I had a great professor who encouraged us to read what moralists were writing in the past, and moralists were writing 200, 300 years before Adam Smith, and basically discovering those authors basically showed me that there was like a campaign to hide these treasures. The way I put it in my book is the French Revolution committed many abuses against the Catholic Church. Well, the Catholic Church was not perfect either, but those abuses by rationalists made many people, the Christians say, I say, without reason, rejected reason. And the rationalists, without reason rejected faith, because rational people are like John Locke, sometimes people credit him to being one of the founders of the U.S. constitutions, although he was 6 years old when the first constitutions were written here, like the Fundamental Orders. John Locke was 6 years old. He has a book called The Reasonableness of Christianity. Then he wrote another book commenting on the Epistle of St. Paul. But I think there is a sort of campaign to hide the Christian views of free market champions like John Locke. So when I came back to the faith, And I saw this is very damaging, that the church doesn't say how all this people who commented on St. Thomas promoted private property, promoted free trade, promoted, that they did not agree that taking from the rich and giving to the poor is justice, So, except in the topic of interest rates, so there was a lot of confusion, if you could charge interest rate. And all the rest were the champions of the free economy. And it was not only me, the most important historian of thought, in economic thought, called Joseph Schumpeter, another Austrian. There was like 70 pages in his great book, and almost credit them for being the founders of economic science. But there was no interest at the Catholic University and many Catholics to write about that. And there was no, and some libertarians who are anti-church also wanted to hide. But I read a small little booklet by Mario Rothbard, and then a student of Hayek, another person who became Nobel laureate. One of his students, Marjorie Grice Hutchison, wrote a little book about the monetary theory of the School of Salamanca. So I decided to go to Spain and study all these originals, and wrote a book which was translated in many countries, from Chinese to Czech, and now it's coming in Portuguese with different names, but basically shows that Christians don't have to be shy in their defense of the free economy, that it's not important by pagans or by foreign ideologies. It's totally consistent with the view of the human person as comes out of the scriptures.
Now, we've talked about your faith, we've talked about ethical fundraising. From what I understand, you place a great emphasis on the connection between economics and ethics. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah. The word economics has many different meanings. If you go to the dictionary, what is the economy sometimes, because how is the real world of physical output, how many houses, how much income we have. The word economics is also used for the science of economics, which is basically how we use means that are scarce, and in order to fulfill needs that are unlimited, and subjective. And this second way of seeing economics is what in science we call non-normative. You don't say if it's good or bad. Suppose I'm going to study as an economist inflation. The prices rise. I say, well, if I print money, what will the effect of prices be? That's a non-normative. It's not, is it good or is it bad? So, but suppose the moralists that I was studying, the saints that have to say, hey, the government puts this price, which is, it doesn't cover my cost. If I charge more, am I sinning? Well, let's see. How are prices? You have to answer that. You have to analyze how our prices are determined. So, hey, I'm raising the price. But it's because now the gold coin now has more copper. So people don't want to pay the same amount. If someone is defrauding me, so I need to charge more of these coins because they have less gold content. Is that okay? So they will study how inflation comes about, and all these priests blame the government because the government was in charge of currency. Now with paper money, it's a hidden process, but still, the government continues to steal from our pockets by printing money. So, but what happens then? So there is a set of knowledge that is non-normative, and ethics, on the other hand, it all has to do with the goodness or badness, of things. So if you speak about good, bad, evil, not evil, that belongs to ethics. To economics, it's just the objective analysis. Some people call it positive analysis. Now, what happens? There's a third acception of economics, which is political economy, which means what we as human beings do in order to create an economic framework. Now, we say we want to be guided by freedom or by, the principle of the Constitution, by these norms. Now, a non-normative science cannot give criterion of value. Value has to come from outside. The economy in itself, and that's why some moralists even the Pope criticizes as people who believe in the radical autonomy of the market, that everything should be decided by the market. That's a dangerous conception, because by itself, the market, if people want to junk or pornographic material or drugs or whatever you want, the market will be very efficient in producing whatever. So, but my problem has been that I knew a lot of people who knew good ethics, a lot of people who knew good economics, but less people who know the importance of good economic ethics. Economics was started like that. Adam Smith, who I wore in my tie, was a model philosopher. He studied, how model philosophy applied to topics that were close to economics. And I think now it's something that we need constantly to use the best knowledge of economics, the best knowledge of ethics, and put them together. Many times I find people who say, look, let's have good families, let's all behave well, and all the problems will be solved. Other people say, no, let's just stop printing money, let's just privatize, let's just deregulate, and everything will be good. And I say, look, we need good economics, and we need good families. So I think that's the way economic thought was started, and I think you always need a body of people and scholars or new scholastics who are using the best economic knowledge to influence ethical judgments, because I think ethical judgments tend to be sometimes even more influential in life in deciding what you're going to do than just having more money, more coffee, more cars, more video games. So it's a permanent struggle. And Acton Institute, the privilege that I have, that they asked me to join them to manage the international area, tries to do exactly that.
That's fantastic. Well, the Leadership Institute trains so many college students, undergraduate and graduate students. What advice would you give to them as they are facing this tremendous rise in popularity of socialism on college campuses?
Look, first, grow yourself. I think that in life, in our organization, knowing who you are and your nature is the number one lesson. Don't fool yourself. Don't get depressed, if there are failures, if there are problems. But the only way, to confront, wrong ideas is by having better ideas. I strongly recommend not to fall into the trap of being simplifying debates. I would ask them to ask tough questions. Part of my economics profession, relies a lot in averages and statistics. There are lies, big lies, and statistics, and so I feel, that even our side, when they want to speak about how many people left poverty, they say, hey, never so many people, hundreds of millions, 100 million people left extreme poverty in the last 10 years. Yeah, but they don't tell that 500 million of those were in communist China. So they use China when it's convenient, and they don't use it when it's not convenient. The same with Scandinavia. I don't like the Scandinavian model, but it has been there for 100 years. There's a big mixture of public sector and private sector. I think it kills part of creativity. I think it has been able to be maintained by an homogeneous society. I don't like it, but I don't have to. People call Sweden socialist when it's convenient, or non-socialist when it's convenient. And so I hope, I was pretty nasty when I was a student. I asked a lot of questions, and I think that helped. That helped in my life. You don't have to be nasty, but just, and especially with today's technologies, you can never stop studying. And one of the person I learned most in my life was Michael Novak, was like 21 years older than me, but born the same day. He wrote the introduction to the first edition of my book that was called Christians for Freedom. And Michael Novak, started almost like a very radical left-wing scriptwriter from McGovern, and was on the left. But each year that you would speak with him, he was a different person, because he has read something different, has grown. And so, he, for a while, Stuart Mill was his ideal author. Then he met the Austrian, and he liked the Austrians. Then he said, hey, we have to pay more more attention to the integral, to all the person, not just the political person. So he was constantly studying, thinking, and there are others, even people who I disagree, but I think that make an honest effort to look at reality, to use good logic and contribute. So don't get trapped in this sloganeering and in easy answers. But number one rule, educate yourself, respect your neighbors, and start from you and your immediate surroundings, and be humble, and I think you can be a happy person.
Dr. Chafuen, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with me and everyone watching today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity and for the great work that Leadership Institute is doing.
You're welcome.